Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your Hurricane and Hurricane HD video blog for July 5th, 2012. Thought I would start things off with a look at sea surface temperature anomalies. If we look at the Pacific, yes, it is warming out here along the equator. However, the warming seems to have slowed, and in some cases we're losing some heat through here. This area was a little bit more filled in with warm anomalies the last few days, week to 10 days or so, but as long as this region right here does not get significantly above normal, and right now it's definitely really at or just below normal right through here, as you can plainly see, then I think the El Nino that is coming will be very, very weak at best. And so we would have a Eastern Pacific weighted El Nino event where the Central Pacific is not quite as warm as it would be in a moderate to strong El Nino. Now, what does all that mean for Atlantic hurricanes? With the absence of a very warm anomaly through this region right here, we shouldn't see the destructive wind shear across the Atlantic basin that we would see during an active El Nino season where the El Nino is very strong. The bottom line, I'm not seeing the Pacific warm nearly as fast as I would expect if we were looking for a moderate to strong El Nino, which could mean a slightly more active than previously thought August, September, and October for the Atlantic basin. We are now less than 60 days until the start of the ramp up in Atlantic activity, climatologically speaking. Around the 1st of August, things start to get more interesting across the Atlantic basin. Speaking of the Atlantic, near to just a little bit below normal sea surface temperatures between Africa and Central America and this hurricane alleyway, as it's called, in between. Then the Gulf rebounding quite nicely, let me go back, quite nicely after Debbie came through and knocked down the sea surface temperatures in this region. You would think with this giant ridge of high pressure sitting over the southeast and all that sinking compressed air and the sunshine just beating down on the tropics like that, the temperatures in the ocean will definitely warm up. And they will, because there's not much wind to stir things up. You know that because it is darn hot out there. And then in the subtropical Atlantic, we do have this fairly moderate band of above normal sea surface temperatures, and then right off the northeast coast, very, very warm compared to normal. None of that matters right now because there's nothing out there to feed off of it. But it's just something to take a look at least once a week to see how things are going, plus or minus normal in the Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific. We do have a fairly vigorous tropical wave here, which you can see clearly outlined in the satellite photograph. It brought some gusty winds and showers and thunderstorms through the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. Today, moving through Puerto Rico and into the eastern portions of Hispaniola. Not going to develop into a tropical storm or a hurricane or even a depression, but these tropical waves are fairly active, and you see how they're starting to blossom west now. It's not blossoming out here. They're starting to blossom when they get past 65 degrees and 60 degrees west longitude. That is interesting because that means maybe in August and September, if they bloom late and turn into a named storm or a hurricane, then they are that much closer to the United States, certainly the Greater Antilles, Florida, and even reaching the Gulf of Mexico and Central America. Just something to point out, that when we see these start to blossom this far west and not out here, we have to really pay attention to what may be happening in August, September, October. The upper level winds are the reason why this won't develop. I mean, let me just outline what's what. Here's the southeast United States. There's Florida around the Gulf Coast, the Yucatan and Central America. Here is Cuba, and here's the tropical wave right in here. If I take the telestration away and then start over, these winds are cutting right across it, right across the top, where they spread out after they hit the system head on, meaning that the wind shear is simply too strong. You want to look for areas where the wind is fanning out in a clockwise direction instead of hitting it head on, and that's just not happening for this system. Where it is happening for a system is Tropical Storm Daniel in the Eastern Pacific. Fairly good high pressure aloft, anticyclone aloft to evacuate the air that's coming in counterclockwise at the surface, and Daniel will continue to strengthen, but very slowly, because it's already pretty far to the north and west of this warm water that's sitting down here. So Daniel will move off. In fact, let's just take a look in just a minute at the track. Another area that's probably going to develop over here south of Central America. If we look at the track for Daniel, it's headed towards an area where the water temperatures cool off out here. And as you can see, by day 5, it weakens to a depression. And if we go back to that satellite picture, you can see this gray, slate-colored grayness all through here. That's where Daniel is headed, into that colder water. That gray color indicates water temperatures that are cooler than they are over here where the nice warm heat content lies. And in fact, this system will probably develop as well. Most of the global computer models see it developing, and it too will continue to move on off to the west and west-northwest. Both of these systems heading in a track generally like that, away from the Mexican coastline, so you guys don't have to worry about it. If you have any interests in Mexico, coastal Pacific Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, the western coast of Costa Rica, no problem at all, as those systems will be moving away from you. So a nice quiet period continues in the Atlantic Basin, which is expected this time of year. Typically we see the lowest amount of activity for the hurricane season during the first 10 days of July. It's just one of those things where everything is just real calm and the air is too dry in the deep tropics. And then when we get towards the end of the month and through August, as you well know, the tropics become much more active. But for now, the rest of the week and into your hopefully extended holiday weekend coming up, everything's going to be nice and quiet in the tropics. Again, I am Mark Sudduth. My website, hurricanetrack.com. A pleasure to produce these videos for Hurricane and Hurricane HD, those wonderful apps for iPhone and iPad. And I'll have another video blog for you tomorrow.